I am Danny Fortson, the West Coast correspondent for the Sunday Times.
We are in an AI moment, aren't we? Are you sometimes surprised the amount at which, the bandwidth that we give over to chatter about AI?
Oh, we are definitely in an AI moment. It is, it's sucking up all the oxygen in the room. It's just, it's everything everywhere all at once in terms of AI. But this is kind of what happens out here when a new idea emerges. Everybody gets very excited, and then the kind of this big machine grinds into motion, and you start just throwing huge amounts of money at it, lots of big crazy ideas, and then we'll see where it all goes.
And you have this thought or question as to whether this might be a bubble. How would you define a bubble in the abstract?
For the context of this conversation, it's just about something where the money, the expectations, the values of these prospective thousands and thousands of companies just completely run away from the reality on the ground. And at some it's kind of that law of gravity: what goes up must come back down. I will say that I think, yes, we are absolutely in a bubble. Things are crazy right now. However, that does not mean that AI is not going to change everything sooner or later. But I think both of those things can be true. If you listen to people like Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Alphabet, other people in the industry, there is a general acceptance that this is an invention akin to harnessing fire, inventing electricity, something that is going to completely change the way we all live, work, do business, etc. So, of course, the money that is being pumped into this industry right now is insane.
How bubbly do you think that bubble is?
Very bubbly, very bubbly. But that's the nature of this crazy Silicon Valley machine out here, is that if you're a venture capitalist, you know that if you're making 10 bets right now, 9 really won't work out. All you need is 1, right? And that pays for all of the failures and then some. That is the nature of the machine. And so you kind of have to, like, you're in the casino, you have to place bets, because if you don't place bets, you're not going to win.
What does this mean for all of us? Those of us who are not even dabbling with investment on a small scale.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple things. Like, there's a question around what does the bubble mean for us? When it pops, what does that mean? And then there's also the question of what does AI mean for us? So the bubble popping, the issue there is that if you look at the S&P 500, like the top 500 US companies that so many people's pensions are invested in, what they call the Magnificent Seven, which are the top 7 tech companies, make up about a third of it, which is a level of concentration that we've really never seen before. Those 7 companies basically make the market go up and make the market go down. If and when they kind of come back to earth, because we all have kind of a collective realization that a lot of this stuff may not be ready for prime time, that it won't deliver as quickly as they expected, whatever it may be, that can have a huge effect on the stock market broadly, which you and I would feel in our pensions and retirement accounts, et cetera. And on that aspect, these companies, the top 10 tech companies between now and 2028 are expected to spend $1 trillion with a T on data centers, which are really like the kind of the infrastructure to house the brains of these AI systems
that horse through electricity and water.
Exactly. You have these companies like revivifying defunct nuclear stations, taking over hydroelectric dams. I mean, it is really extraordinary what is happening. That level of investment is like building the railroads, digging the canals. It is a level of an infrastructure investment that hasn't really been seen since basically the dot-com boom, when companies, laid 80 million miles of fiber optics cables all over the US to connect, kind of basically to bring the world onto the internet. The part of that story is that most of the companies who dug those, trenches to lay that cable went bankrupt because the internet just took longer. So that is kind of where we are. We're just in this moment of kind of a little bit of collective madness, and there is reason behind it, and there is real value there, and the revolution is kind of, we're in the middle of it, the early stages, but how long it takes to arrive and who gets kind of chewed up in that process, that's what we're going to see play out.
And do you think that the revolution is also something of a bubble that will pop? Like, our hopes, expectations, and dreams for AI need to come down to earth a little bit. I mean, great, it can draft complicated documents. I had it show me what paint colours might suit my sitting room. Lovely. Is it really going to change the world as much as we think, though?
There's a guy called Dario Amodei. He runs Anthropic, who's maker of the Claude chatbot. I'm sure you've heard of them. He wrote an essay called Machines of Loving Grace, 10,000 words. It's a tome. And in it, he basically pitches it as, what if everything goes right? And in there are some pretty wild predictions. If he says, like, look, if you think about AI as a country of geniuses in a data center, what are you going to use those geniuses to do? Because now we have, if you have all of a sudden a team of Nobel Prize winners to throw at a problem, and those Nobel Prize winners happen to be just actually housed in server racks as opposed to, carbon-based life forms. And they never stop working. They never get tired. They never take a vacation. What does that mean? We could compress a century of progress in terms of biology, human health, into a decade. We could cure all disease. We could all dramatically increase our health span and lifespan, so we're all living to our hundreds, playing tennis at 120. These are some of the kind of outlandish ideas that people, very smart people, very knowledgeable people are saying, well, maybe. And then you have other things like, will our progeny need to ever drive a car? Will they need to know how to drive a car? Will that be a skill that you even require? Because I live out here in the Bay Area. You go to San Francisco, there are Waymos, these driverless cars, everywhere, and they're very good. And they have less accidents than human drivers. That future is happening now, right? So these are some of the more kind of out there predictions.
So do you kind of forgive us all then for getting caught up and inflating this bubble with all these expectations, as we have done in the past, even though we've got the examples of history? It is very easy to get carried away.
Yeah. I mean, look, absolutely. I'm a skeptical journalist, and I had my plan as a 24-year-old to be, retired by 30 with my dot-com riches. Didn't work out. So so I am a bit kind of default skeptical about some of these things, but it is, as anybody who's used these systems, they are also quite impressive. I can paint a picture of me on my fifth career, doing astrophysics with the help of my AI assistant, my AI scientist at my side, and then call up my autonomous car to take me to my tennis game with my 120-year-old friend who I've now known for, 110 years. It is very exciting, right? It is like, it's almost kind of impossible to truly comprehend. But again, the only thing I would say about Silicon Valley is that it's a company building machine. It's also a myth machine. It's very good at marketing the kind of the brave new world. Things are inevitably more complicated and move slower.
And just finally, this is quite crystal ball stuff, but when will we know this bubble bursting, this great consolidation is upon us, will happen?
There's usually like a trigger, an event, a big company failing, or something going very wrong. What that is impossible to predict because, as I said, there are literally thousands of startups that have just materialized out of nowhere in these past few years, trying all kinds of crazy things. It reminds me of a quote during the financial crisis of 2008. The former CEO of Citigroup, when it was clear that things were not sustainable. Wall Street was at record highs, but they were just like, it was all built on this kind of, this house of cards of very bad loans all over the world. And the CEO of Citigroup, he's like, look, the music's playing, so I'm still dancing. And I feel like the music is we're in the middle of the song right now. When that song ends, or when the record scratches and everybody's kind of stops and looks at each other like, oh, that's really hard to predict. But again, I think that it's important to drive home the point that we are going to have that record scratch moment. But again, the internet did change the world for good and ill. AI is going to change the world for good and ill. It's a question of pace, and the kind of creative destruction that happens along the way. And that's what makes this such a fascinating and a little bit terrifying story.